Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday. It's the 24th day of November, 2025. And as we begin Thanksgiving week here in the United States of America, the headlines from around the world continue to tell us the same story. Namely, the Bible has it right, 100% correct, with respect to what it tells us is going to happen in the last days before the second coming of Jesus Christ and the many events that are predicted to precede it. So let's look at the headlines. First of all, from Israel, the Jerusalem Post. Israel's security cabinet is going to establish a team to implement the second phase of Trump's Gaza plan. Now, if you recall yesterday, we mentioned that in Egypt, you've got Hamas meeting with the Egyptian negotiators, working on how they'll implement the second phase of the plan. And their goal is to make sure they're not disarmed during the second phase and they can still be in control, which of course is totally contrary to Trump's 20-point peace plan. So we'll see how that all works out. So that's coming from Israel. As always, it's a developing story, and we'll continue talking about it, obviously, in the days to come. All right, two stories from Sky News with respect to Russia and Ukraine and the peace talks. Donald Trump, first of all, says something good just may be happening on the Ukraine peace talks. That's one of the headlines from Sky News. And the other is Zelenskyy says Ukraine will work on peace proposals that strengthen, not weaken us. Interesting. So we'll look at those stories. And then a really disturbing story from Breitbart News. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says Democrats are telling the military to refuse orders, and that helps our enemies. They've actually done a video telling the U.S. military, telling what we've got something like 2 million soldiers out there, men and women in the armed forces, not to obey Trump's orders. And so this is horrific, but it's not surprising. And finally, a very important story from Newsmax. Trump says no expansion for big TV networks. And this is an extremely important story. We'll explain to you why that is and what's going on right now. And not surprising, this sort of stuff is taking place because these networks that want to expand, basically, they're leftist networks and they preach, again, anti-American, anti-conservative values, anti-Christian values, and Judeo-Christian ethics. And they're getting bigger and bigger, and they want to expand across the United States. And there are supposed to be limits to how many stations a network can have, and they've already exceeded these limits, and yet they want to have more stations added. So we'll talk about that, what that may mean. All right. These five stories continue to support the biblical predictions of what our world's going to look like in the last days as we document it in our book, 25 Signs We're Near the End. In fact, we're going to find out in this story, first story, that Israel's still searching for peace. That is sign 7. Russia in the headlines while wielding its power, sign 9 of our 25 signs. Lawlessness in the U.S. government, sign 11 and sign 17. We'll talk about what those mean. And the technology continuing to send the messages of anti-God, antichrist propaganda with the goal of controlling the population, all the while preparing the world for the final Antichrist. That's signs 14 and 15 of our 25 signs. And so we're going to look at those and explain those as we do each of these stories. The book is a free download, 25 signs are near the end, from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. All our material is free. Please take advantage of it. Please tell others about it. We want people to know what's going on and how it all fits precisely with what Scripture says will take place in the last days. All right, let's look at the headlines. Number 1, Security Cabinet to establish team to implement second phase of Trump's Gaza plan. It's from the Jerusalem Post. Members of the team will reportedly include, and they mention the names Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and the Justice Minister Yariv Levin, according to Israeli media. A small team of Knesset members will be established in order to implement the second phase of U.S. President Trump's Gaza deal. Security Cabinet decided that on Thursday's meeting. They just revealed it today on Monday. The decision follows the UN Security Council Monday vote, this last Monday, in support of U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan and for a UN mandate to establish the International Stabilization Force, or the ISF, that is expected to be deployed in the Gaza Strip. And we already mentioned who the members of the team are, according to Israeli media. After the decision was announced, a minister of the Knesset, Gila Gamaliel from Likud, noticed her frustration over the team's lack of women, according to the Israeli public broadcaster Kan News, saying that having women present would give the team balance. Another minister of the Knesset from Likud, David Amsalem, also asked if the team's small size is to prevent leaks of sensitive information. According to Khan News, he received a positive answer from the government secretary, and then quoted Amsalem as slamming the notion, saying that these are the people who are leaking the information. Smotrich and Ben Gvir are the ones that are always going to the press leaking it. So why are they on this, this small group that's going to and supposed to be close to the vest, telling us what's going to happen, or not telling us what's going to happen with respect to phase two of Trump's peace plan? So Netanyahu basically he said Israel's working to conclude phase A of the plan. He did not know how long the ceasefire would hold. He further added that there's still three deceased hostages that have yet to be returned for burial as part of the agreement of phase one. And then Strzok, this minister of the Knesset, said, "Look, we did not go to war only to free hostages." He told the prime minister, who responded by saying Israel has given its approval to establish the International Security Force for the purposes of demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. All right, so what do we find here? Well, Israel continued to fight its enemies from all sides. It actually got seven different sides, as we've talked about, where they're fighting right now. The main ones, of course, are in Gaza. There's renewed fighting we're seeing with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They just took out the second in command of Lebanon yesterday, which was a huge deal. And of course, Iran is preparing for a further attack on Israel somewhere down the line. So zero chance. They have zero chance of achieving peace with their enemies. And that's sign 7 of our 25 signs. There'll be a continual search for peace in Israel, a search that they will never find. All right, we have two headlines from Sky News about the Ukraine war's latest. And we'll give you those updates. Donald Trump says something good just may be happening after the peace plan is updated. Donald Trump said that on talks to end the war in Ukraine. Something good just may be happening after his administration's peace plan was updated following Ukraine-U.S. talks in Geneva. Trump posted on social media to provide an update of the talks. In a short message on his Truth Social platform, the U.S. president says, "Is it really possible that big progress is being made in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine?" With 3 question marks after that. Is it really possible? He says, "Don't believe it until you see it, but something good just may be happening." All right, his latest comments come after Ukraine leadership have expressed, he said, zero gratitude, all uppercase letters, for U.S. efforts in a longer post yesterday. Wasn't impressed with Ukraine not thanking the U.S. for at least trying to get something done between peace with them and Russia. All right, then we hear from Zelenskyy. He says Ukraine will work on peace proposals that strengthen, not weaken us. This is also from Sky News. He's been speaking about the ongoing discussions over a peace plan in Ukraine. Speaking via video link at a Crimean platform summit in Sweden, Zelenskyy said Kiev would continue to work with its partners on compromises on the proposals made by the U.S. to strengthen, not weaken Ukraine. Russia must pay for the war in Ukraine. A decision on using its frozen assets was crucial to any peace proposal, Zelenskyy said. Ukraine's parliamentary speaker, his name is Ruslan Stefanchuk, who is also attending the summit, said the country's plans for EU and NATO membership must form part of its security guarantees in any peace plan. Ukraine's red lines for the peace talks include no formal recognition of occupied Ukrainian territories, no limits to its defense forces, and no restrictions on its future alliances, Stefanchuk said. And those are 3 things that Russia demands, that they're red lines. Okay. Again, he says the countries, these red lines, there's no formal recognition of these territories, no limits to its defense force, no restrictions on future alliances. These are non-negotiable. So we're at a proverbial, fork in the road here. Is it going to be an impasse? Is it going to stop at the talks from going forward, or are they going to come to some type of compromise? All right, what these 2 headlines do, though, these last 2 with this peace issue in Ukraine, they do reflect the power of Russia in the last days. And this power will eventually allow them to lead a coalition of nations who will invade Israel with the goal of taking something from them that they need. Sign number 9 of our 25 signs. We're near the end. In the last days, certain specified nations will invade Israel, Ezekiel 38:39. We know from scripture it will be led by a Russian leader. His title is Gog, G-O-G. We don't know whether or not it's Vladimir Putin, but Putin certainly acts like Gog, but whether he is the ultimate Gog, as Scripture predicts, we do not know. So we'll wait and see. But the point is, Russia's in the headlines as a powerful nation, precisely what we'd expect to see at the time of the end and be powerful enough to lead this coalition of nations, including Iran and Turkey, to eventually invade Israel. But that's still off in the future. All right, a very disturbing story. Headline number 4. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says the Dems are telling the military to refuse orders, and this helps our enemies. It's a Breitbart story. During an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Democratic lawmakers' video message to military members about illegal orders helps our enemies, close quote. Host Christian Welker said, let me ask you about another topic this week that got a lot of attention. 6 congressional Democrats released a video with a message to service members and intelligence officers. She asked, President Trump accused these lawmakers of, quote, seditious behavior punishable by death. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said that every order President Trump gives is lawful. He's the commander in chief. Are you confident that every order that President Trump gives is lawful? Bessent said, Kristen, what I am confident of is this is a display of gross negligence here, and that there are 2.1 million service members. And you're probably going to ask, you're probably going to say that are off the rails. Are these representatives off the rails? These ones that have said that they've gotten death threats. Isn't that something terrible? He says, well, what about the 2.1 million service members? They have put their lives at risk. There is one commander in chief, and when you step outside the chain of command and try to create noise and chaos, this only helps our enemies. She said, are you confident, though, Mr. Secretary, that every order that President Trump gives is in fact lawful? He said, I am confident of that. And I'm also confident that this was a complete mistake. They should retract it. Well, they certainly should. It's terrible. So, 2 of our 25 signs come to mind here. One is sign 11. No superpower will intervene on Israel's behalf. This one, Ezekiel 38:39 invasion takes place. Something will happen in the United States. There'll be a decline in the power and authority and the strength of the United States at the time of the end. Then sign 17, the world will be characterized by lawlessness. Where here we go. We have representatives that were voted in by the people to represent the best interests of the United States of America. 6 Democratic Congress people doing a video basically saying, don't obey what the commander in chief says. In other words, break the law, defy him in the orders that he gives. And that, of course, is treason, like Bessent said. But it's not surprising in the world in which we live. The United States continues to suffer, continues to destroy itself, shoot itself in the foot. And it's going to be, and it's less and less going to be a world power as we get closer and closer to the time of the end. And certainly not in the Middle East. We've talked about this. Their goal, and they've done it through a number of ways, is getting out of the Middle East, trying to put some type of coalition together between the Saudis and the Israelis with the F-15, fighter jets, the stealth fighters that basically could control that area from them being, attacked and hurt by Iran, meaning the United States can go elsewhere. So we'll see what happens there. But again, this follows a couple of our sides. Now, this last one is really a huge story. I was going to do it the other day. We had other things come up. And as Newsmax says, piggybacked on the previous one, Trump says no expansion for big TV networks. He supports Newsmax and their goal on this. President Trump came out swinging against his own FCC chairman over plans that would allow major TV networks to significantly expand their national reach. And then an all in uppercase letters from Trump. No expansion of the fake news networks. If anything, make them smaller. And then smaller is an uppercase. Also, President Trump posted on Truth Social. He included in his post a link to a recent Newsmax report. Newsmax CEO Rudy, FCC lifting TV cap, disaster for conservatives, and certainly would be. Well, the Newsmax story reported that the network opposes a merger plan involving Nexstar is the name of the network, Nexstar, which is seeking to acquire Tegna, Tegna. The deal would create the largest TV station group with 244 stations across 44 states. Nexstar operates the liberal-leaning news channel News Nation, hosted by Chris Cuomo in prime time. The company leans heavily Democratic, with Nexstar employees having given 78% of their donations to Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. So you can see where this group leans. Newsmax CEO Chris Ruddy, a longtime friend of the president, has been outspoken in opposing both the merger and any FCC plan to lift the current ownership cap. Ruddy pointed out that President Ronald Reagan established the TV ownership cap in the 1980s to prevent large networks from controlling most local stations. By extension, of course, local news. Congress later raised the cap to 39%. Nexstar is now now urging the FCC to ignore the cap, disregard federal law, and allow the company to reach more than 80% of U.S. households. Responding to those concerns, Trump wrote, if this would also allow the radical leftist networks to enlarge, I would not be happy. ABC and NBC News in particular are a disaster, a virtual arm of the Democratic Party. He also added that the major network should be viewed as an illegal campaign as making an illegal campaign to the radical left. In other words, here's the bottom line. They want the FCC to ignore the cap that was given by President Reagan in the 80s. Its Congress raised to 39%. In other words, no one organization can have more than 39% of the TV networks in the U.S. This would allow the country to reach 80% next start of the U.S. households. And what would this do? Well, what it does is illustrates where our world is headed. Namely, the media will continue to be more anti-God, anti-Christ. In other words, technology with its reach would continue to set the stage for the arrival of the final Antichrist. There'll be an exponential increase in technology. That's sign 15 of our 25 signs. While sign 14, the world will desperately look for a leader. Sign 14. And we developed the career of the final Antichrist a great deal in our book called The Final Antichrist, The Coming Caesar. It is a free download from our website, Educating Our World. In other words, what it's going to do, bottom line, as this previous story said, is control local elections because it'll have tremendous input, 80% of the United States, and try and control as best they can local elections, giving positive these stories that are basically promoting the leftist agenda and highlighting them and just giving great kudos to what they're saying, and then either not doing any stories from the right or else denouncing what's going on and usually not even reporting correctly what's being said. In other words, what they will do very clearly is promote the leftist causes. And this is more and more, leading to the demise of America. Let's just face it, because that's all they get. Left stories, how wonderful they are, the leftists and all their, liberal agenda. And then the right is a bunch of, Neanderthals that want to go back to the past, that believe in, God, that believe in the Bible and things like that. We don't want to have that anymore. So this is what we're already getting, and now they want more and more to happen. So anyway, that's another huge story too, and we'll keep an eye on this. But it fits what Scripture promotes will happen in the last days. Basically, the world will be characterized by this type of mentality. All right, again, we're amazed at how the various worldwide headlines minutely support how the Scripture characterizes the last days. We're amazed but never surprised. Sign 25, Bible believers will understand what is taking place. We certainly will as we look at the stories every day. And again, excuse me for my voice. It gives out at times. For those of you who are new, a few months ago, I got the 2025 edition of the Chinese Communist Party coronavirus, and it's kind of affected my voice. So at times it kind of falls apart at the end of some of these broadcasts in the morning. So we, apologize for it. The good news is in the summaries that we have on YouTube and on our app, EOW with Don Stewart, we've got printed what we say, the headlines and the summarization, what we're saying, in case you didn't get everything. All right, until next time, as always, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless you.